How I took control of time itself through ruthless self-discipline. It was the middle of winter, and the biting cold seeped through the cracks of my tiny apartment as I sat, paralyzed by the ticking of the clock on my wall. The world outside was racing ahead while I found myself stuck in a loop, one where every day felt like a repeat of the last. The most terrifying part? I couldn't stop it. Time was slipping through my fingers like sand in an hourglass, and I was too weak to stop the flow. But then, on a particularly bleak morning, something shifted. I found myself standing at the edge of my bed, staring at the same clock I had feared for years. I didn't know it yet, but at that exact moment, I was about to make a decision that would change my relationship with time and my life forever. What happened next was a brutal confrontation with my own habits. No one tells you this, but the truth is, mastering time isn't about scheduling your day or setting reminders. It's about ruthlessly conquering your mind, your body, your very instincts. And the secret I discovered, it's the difference between being dragged along by life and taking control of it. I had spent so much of my life trying to bend to the clock, but now I realized the clock was a lie. Time didn't control me. I controlled it. But here's the catch. It wasn't as simple as it sounds. In fact, there was one brutal truth I had to face that would push me to my limits, one decision that almost broke me, but in the end, redefined everything. The days that followed felt like a blur. It wasn't just the lack of sleep or the feeling that time was working against me. It was the quiet hum of resistance deep inside. The first few days of my new life felt like torture. Every hour I committed to being ruthless with my time, my body and mind screamed for rest. I wasn't prepared for how much I would fight myself. There were moments when I considered abandoning everything, and simply letting life take its course. But it wasn't the exhaustion that would break me. It was the realization of what I was truly capable of when I had no distractions, no excuses, and no one to answer to but myself. I remember the first time I woke up before dawn. My eyes were barely open, my body screamed for warmth, and the world outside was still sleeping. It was the moment I made the conscious choice to fight for time rather than be its victim. As I sat by the window, staring out into the desolate frozen city, I made a promise. I would not be ruled by the passage of time any longer. I was going to control it, bend it to my will. The first challenge was simple: silence. In the chaos of my world, I'd spent years drowning out the noise, thinking that distractions were a temporary escape. But now, I had to face them head on. Every single moment was filled with an overwhelming sense of urgency, like I was running out of time, but not in the way you'd think. It wasn't about doing more in less time. It was about filling every second with purpose. And that meant cutting out everything I had once allowed myself to indulge in. TV, social media, idle chatter, all distractions that once removed left a vacuum. A vacuum that forced me to look inward, face the darkness of my own mind, and confront the most uncomfortable truth. I had been wasting my life. At first, there was only discomfort, a deep, gnawing emptiness where I once sought comfort. Every free moment felt unbearable. It was as if I was drowning in silence, in the absence of the noise I had grown so accustomed to. But somewhere in the stillness, I realized that this was the key. This emptiness wasn't a void. It was an opportunity to rebuild everything, to reinvent myself. But self-discipline isn't something you simply decide to adopt. It's not as easy as flipping a switch. It's a slow, grueling process where every single moment is a battle between the part of you that seeks comfort and the part that wants more. The part that refuses to give in, refuses to let time slip through your fingers. And this battle, this ongoing war inside me, would define the next few months of my life. Each day began to feel like a monumental effort. I woke earlier, moved faster, spoke less, and did more. But every decision carried its own weight. There were moments when I almost broke, moments when I stared at the clock, felt the weight of time pressing down, and almost succumbed to the idea that I couldn't keep going. The world around me was still racing ahead, while I was locked in this intense battle of will. And that's when the breakthrough happened. It was subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but it hit me with a force I hadn't anticipated. I wasn't just managing time anymore, I was mastering it. I started noticing the small victories, the little moments when I chose discipline over distractions. I felt the subtle shift in my energy, as if I had tapped into something deeper, something timeless. The more I controlled my actions, the more I noticed how the world around me seemed to slow down, as if I were the one dictating its rhythm. By this point, I had stopped chasing the clock. Instead, I began to observe it. Time no longer had power over me. I had become a master of it. But of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were setbacks, plenty of them. There were days when I faltered, moments when I doubted myself, and instances where I felt as though I was losing ground. Yet each time I stumbled, I found my resolve stronger than before. Time, like any powerful force, required respect. It demanded discipline. And so I pushed forward. Every day became a new opportunity to test my limits, to refine my understanding of how time itself worked. It was in the middle of another brutal week, exhausted, sore, and questioning my decisions, that I had a realization that changed everything. Time isn't the enemy. Your mind is. Time is a constant. It moves whether you're paying attention to it or not. But what defines you, what shapes your reality, is how you choose to respond to it. Time is a resource, just like energy. It's only when you master your mind and your actions that time becomes an ally, not an enemy. That was the moment everything clicked. The illusion of control over time vanished, and what remained was a profound understanding that I wasn't controlling time. I was mastering myself. The battle was never about the clock. It was always about learning to bend my own will, to rise above the distractions, the doubts, and the fleeting urges that had once ruled my existence. And when I finally came to terms with that, when I stopped resisting and simply accepted that I had the power to shape my world, that's when I truly took control. As I sit here now, reflecting on how far I've come, I realize that the hardest part wasn't waking up early or cutting out distractions. The hardest part was learning to trust myself, to trust that I was enough, that I didn't need more time, I needed more discipline. So I ask you, if you had the power to bend time to your will, to take full control of every moment, what would you do with it? Would you continue to let time slip away, or would you take a stand and create your own destiny? If this story resonates with you, drop a comment below and let me know what your first step towards taking control of your time would be. Like, share, and don't forget to subscribe. You'll want to stay tuned for the next chapter in this journey, where we dive deeper into the power of discipline and what happens when you finally embrace your true potential.